Now that this is completely dry, we're ready to go on to the next step with some pen work. So I'm going to clear all of these wet things, the paints and stuff, out of the way. But I'm going to keep this little note card here to test out my pen. So remember, I said that it didn't matter if these got a little irregular on the edges, or even when you're painting if they blipped out, because we're going to be drawing on top of it now. So you can grab your pen and your erasers. And the first thing you can do is use one of these erasers to take off the little extra marks. So now that it's dry, we can erase this. I'm working with a Staedtler pen, like I mentioned. It's a pigment liner and it's a 0.3. And now I'm going to do a little border on each of the boxes. So I just like to have a few tests here. And then I'm going to trace around the edges. And I'm actually going to do more than one line around each box just to keep a nice loose feel to it. So I'll do the first line. All the way around. And then I'm going to come back and just overlap it a little bit. So that's where I said it doesn't matter if it's perfectly aligned. I just like to have a looser, sketchy feel to things sometimes. So you can go ahead and do the rest of your boxes now. The next step to our project is to draw some items from nature. Now, I've collected some items from a walk I went on today at the beach and some things from my backyard. So you can do the same. You can find an area that you'd like to go to collect some items. Or if it's nice weather, this would be really lovely at this stage to take your piece of paper and a clipboard or a book to draw on and take this outside with you and do the drawing in situ. That would feel like a really cool way to do the field journaling. It happens to be raining here. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and so this was the best way for me to approach it today. But there's those two ways to do it. Collect the items, bring them to the studio, or to go out to the landscape and do this out on the landscape. So for our drawing, we're going to be using our permanent pen again. And the idea behind this is that when we are drawing, one, we're practicing the skill of drawing, but I think more importantly, the process of drawing from observation really allows me to slow down and take a really close look at what I'm drawing, take a deep breath, and really experience the items that I have found in nature. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't think that I'm great at drawing. However, I think that the practice of drawing is a way for me to tune into nature and to tune into myself. There's two ways you could do this drawing, and two ways that I enjoy. One is to simply sketch it from observation, doing all the details that you want. And the second way to do this would be to do something called a continuous line drawing. So a continuous line drawing would be to hold your object and to not lift your pen and just keep drawing it. Or you could use some combination of those two techniques. So I'll get started. And as you choose your object, you can decide which box it goes in. Maybe you'll do that based on a feeling of color. Maybe it's the layout that you want, so you don't necessarily have to work in order across the page. So you can really choose how detailed you want to make this drawing. The practice of drawing is to serve you and how you're feeling. So I decided to sketch this one with a few details and shade in just a couple of areas, but if you want to just do a simple, loose, continuous line drawing, that works as well. So now you can go ahead to your other squares and do a drawing of each of the items. If any of them really call to you and you feel like repeating them, you could draw them from different angles, and it's your choice. Enjoy the drawing practice. How did you find your drawing practice? I find that when I draw from observation, I have to be so present in the moment and that I really zoom in on the details of those tiny objects. And I find it's just such a nice way to be with an object and to really look and really be in the present moment. Of course, I also mentioned sometimes I feel uptight when I'm drawing from real objects because the inner critic starts raging and telling me that doesn't look perfect. But I continually remind myself through this process that it's about the experience of taking time for myself, my art practice, and really observing the things that I see. So if you had the inner critic kind of come up there, know that I have that too, and you're certainly not alone in that. But I hope that drawing from the real objects gave you a sense of connection to those natural objects, connection to nature, and maybe to see some things that you didn't see in those objects before, especially the really tiny ones. So you can see here that I used a few different styles of drawing, and I just went with how I was feeling for each object. Some of them turned out kind of interesting, like this piece of seaweed reminds me of a map, and I really love maps, so it's kind of neat how the drawing reveals something of myself and my personality as well. This one, I kind of went rogue and did the drawing upside down. I just wanted a different feel for it in the box. So that kind of leads into the next part, which is to make some field notes on our feelings. And so I want you to think about how you've been feeling in the past day or maybe couple of days. And of course, we have many feelings throughout the day itself, as well as over the course of a couple of days. So I want you to look at your objects and think about how you've been feeling, reflect on your past day or two, and see if you can find a few words, a phrase, or a couple of words about feelings that connect to the objects. And each person, something different will come up for them. So, you might look at this dried inside of a flower. It's an old dead flower, and you might say, it feels tired or fragile. Or if you're feeling a different way today, you might say that it is graceful. So I want you to pay attention to what words come up for you. Probably your first thought is the right answer for you. It's intuitive. Try not to judge yourself with what comes up. I mentioned in the intro about that phrase, name it to tame it. And that by naming the feeling that you're feeling, it can really be a good starting point for grounding yourself. Now, I mentioned it in the context of children, but I've actually heard about it mentioned in mindfulness for adults many times too. And the name it to tame it isn't to tame it because your feeling is bad or wrong, or you shouldn't be having it, or that you're trying to push it away. The name it to tame it is so that you can address that feeling, give space for that feeling. And as soon as you name it, which is what we're going to be doing, we're going to be naming our feelings underneath each box. The naming of it can kind of have this effect of releasing some energy around that feeling, or it can give us some direction next. So my first feeling, one of my feelings this week was a feeling of anger. And it's okay to feel angry. But I also realized that underneath that was I was really, really tired. So that might be a word that I include here, is actually feeling tired. Or I could write angry and tired. It just allowed me that release when I realized what the word was and I named it. So in field journaling, in its traditional sense, we put notes on the page. So at this point, what you're doing is you're writing one word or a phrase that connects to the feelings and connects to the drawings. So you can go ahead now and add those words. I'm just going to do handwriting under each box. For the final step of your field notes on feelings, you can add in a few field note type notes at the top of your page or in the space at the bottom. So I'm going to add in a title. Some of the other things that you could add would be the date, the location, where you are when you're making this, where you collected your items from. You could add some little details like the longitude and latitude or the time of day, sounds that you heard while you were out collecting these items or while you were outside drawing. So you can use any of the space up here or down here. And if you put your titling and things at the top, there's also a little bit of space at the bottom if you just want to do some free writing about how this experience was for you, or to build upon any of these feelings. If you want to pick one or two to just free write about, there's space at the bottom to do that as well. Thank you so much for joining me for this lesson. I hope that you enjoyed it. I really look forward to seeing your works in the Facebook group if you choose to share them there. You can find me at NicoleWarrington.com. I also love hanging out on Instagram at CoastalNicole. I look forward to seeing you also in the next lesson. My main lesson is Orca in the Stars, and that will be a watercolor and drawing lesson as well. Take care. I'll see you next time.